Hello, and welcome back to Astro Codex's channel. This is the first in a new series of videos where we cover fundamental concepts for DragonFable Endgame boss fights. In this video, we'll cover Gearswapping, that is, changing the gear you have equipped during a boss fight. The video covers the four main types of gear that you'll swap between. For each type of gear, we'll cover what purpose it serves and when you want to swap to it, as well as examples of the gear in each category. We'll go down the types of gear in order of how important they are in my experience. The first and most important category of gear is gear that provides resistance to enemy damage. The more resistance you have to an element, the less damage you take from attacks of that element. For example, if you have 60 resistance to an attack's element, that means you take 60% less damage from that attack. If you had to pick one set of gear to stick to, you should stick to resist gear, as greatly reducing incoming damage from enemies is almost always helpful. In the majority of cases, this simply means using gear that maximizes your all resist. Versus bosses that only use a single element, you might instead pick gear that maximizes your resistance to that particular element. For example, versus bosses that do darkness damage, you might want to use a set of gear of 80 darkness resist, while versus bosses that do ice damage, you might instead use a set of gear of 80 ice resist. Note, however, that the resistance to each element from your gear is capped at 80. In many cases, having stun resistance is also very important. Therefore, you might use gear that maximizes the resistance to the boss's element or to all elements, while still having 100 or more immobility plus all resist. The second category of gear that you might swap to is gear that gives you negative health resist. The lower your health resistance is, the more you heal. Note that all resist counts toward health resist as well. By swapping a gear that has significantly less health resist, you can greatly increase the amount you heal from potions or from your healing skills. For example, the standard 66 all resist gear has 13 net health, which means you'll heal 910 HP from max level health potion. By swapping to minus health gear of net minus 75 health, each health potion will instead heal 1,829 health points. In other words, more than twice as much. As minus health gear does not provide much resistance to enemy attacks, swapping to minus health gear is generally only done on turns when the enemy doesn't attack you, when the enemies only do weak attacks, or when you're behind a shield. A third category of gear is gear that maximizes your damage output. This generally means weapons of high damage and accessories of high main stat and crit. For example, with Best in Slot gear, Doom Knight's Inner Darkness does about 2,800 damage on average. With Uragiri or Verad and Best in Slot Strength and Crit gear, Inner Darkness instead does about 3,550 damage average, about 26% more. Similarly, Chaos Weaver's E-Gambit into Untangle does about 2,300 damage with standard Best in Slot gear. With Uragiri and Plus Int gear equipped, the same E-Gambit into Untangle instead does about 2,950 damage, a full 28% more. As a rule of thumb, you can get about 25% more damage by swapping to Uragiri or Verad and the offensive accessories, assuming the enemy has neutral resistances. Note that equipping Uragiri or Verad gives 15 to 20% additional damage by itself, while the other offensive gear swap only adds an additional 5 to 10% more damage. In many cases, you'll see players just gear swap to Uragiri or Verad, as you get most of the benefit with much less hassle than a full offensive gear swap. As offensive gear also does not provide much resistance to enemy attacks, you generally don't want to swap to it when the enemy can take advantage by inflicting massive damage back at you. Therefore, offensive gear swap generally only happens on turns when the enemy doesn't attack or only does a very weak attack, when you're behind a shield, or when the gear swap can finish off a weakened enemy. The fourth and final type of gear swap is MPM Gear swap, where you equip items that increase your melee, pierce, and magic avoidance. This allows you to avoid more incoming attacks. In DragonFable, you need 151 more net MPM than the enemy's bonus in order to always avoid every attack from the enemy. As most bosses in the game have 23 or more bonus, and standard Best in Slot gear has around 50 MPM, this means that blinds and smaller shields do not provide full damage immunity. For example, versus the standard 23 bonus in-boss, Timekiller's minus 70 bonus blind means that the boss will completely miss only around 64% of the time. Versus the same boss with Epic's plus 80 MPM Ultra Defense boost, the boss will miss around 70% of the time, meaning that you still have a 30% chance to get hit. However, by combining these skills with Gearswapping a gear of high MPM, you can guarantee that the enemy will always miss you. In recent times, as bosses have gotten more bonus, MPM Gearswap has also been useful even with larger shields. For example, Notha, Bane of Destiny, performs her Good Evil nuke with 103 bonus, which means that even with a 180 MPM shield, you'll need to stack MPM to fully avoid it. As with other gear swaps, MPM Gear significantly decreases your resistance, and thus increases the damage inflicted by the hits that do land. So, it's generally only used in combination with a blind or a shield to raise your MPM past the threshold of 151 more than the enemy's bonus. This concludes the guide to Gearswap. For examples of each of the 4 types of gear, check the links in the description. What other types of niche Gearswap have you encountered in the game? What other endgame concepts or topics should I make guides for next? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching and good luck.